Welcome to episode 120. Are you ready for the adventure of a lifetime? No matter your destination, the travel specialists at 3D Travel Company are there to help. Just head on over to my website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click the Book Now button on the left-hand side to get your free quote today.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest is the voice of Geoffrey the Giraffe from Toys R Us. He voiced the character from 2001 till about 2004 on some of the funniest, most epic, and most memorable commercials of all time. As many of you have probably already heard, Toys R Us is closing each and every one of its stores worldwide on June of 2018. It's really sad to know that kids in the future won't know what it means to be a Toys R Us kid. So today we pay tribute to the toy store that's meant so much to us for the last 70 years, talking to the man behind the voice of Geoffrey for one of its time periods, although there's been several renditions. But not only was he the voice of Geoffrey the Giraffe, which is a job he absolutely admired and loved with a passion, but he's also the voice of Woody from Toy Story. That's right, from Toy Story. Now, he voices the character for his brother Tom when he is unavailable to record. So the very first toys that had the pull strings to the Disney Mania rides at the parks and so much more, he voices Woody. I am super excited to be bringing you this interview today, but before we do, there's a few clips we'll share, a couple of commercials from Toys R Us, and then a clip or two of Woody from Disney Mania, and one from the Buzz Lightyear movie where there was a little bit of pre-play where the toys were all putting the VHS in the tape player. So I hope you guys enjoy these clips, and I hope you'll stay tuned for today's amazing interview with today's super special guest. I hope you all enjoy.
Here comes Peter, Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail.
All right, we'll have a big Easter sale. Just please, make him stop.
Did you read a book to the kids?
No, their friend Geoffrey said he'd read him one.
Who?
And here on the next page, there's Chicken Dance Elmo. Yep, that's him. Just look at those feathers. Turn. Ooh, Spider-Man web blaster with authentic web goo. Now that's a toy.
Look for the Toys R Us Big Toy Book with low-price superstars like Barbie as Rapunzel for $16.99, Leapfrog Junior Explorer Globe for $49.99, or Hot Wheels Octoblast Trucks at just $29.99. Now at Toys R Us. More fun, more choices, more ways to save.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to spit on you there, kids. I just get so excited.
The new action-packed Buzz Lightyear movie!
All right, move it up.
Somebody put it in the tape! Put it in! My tiny arms can't reach!
Okay, hold your horses, Rex.
Put it in!
Gosh, it's stuck.
Ah!
Just kidding.
Ah!
Let me take a look at that. A Buzz Lightyear movie.
Hey, what do you know? You don't look so fat when they draw you that way.
Let's watch it.
Yes, please! Quick!
Buzz, we're not gonna watch the whole thing. We just want to see all the commercials at the beginning.
What?
All right, let's loosen things up for some bonus points. Shake it up, partner. Now that was some rootin' tootin' shooting, partner. Oh, way to play, everyone. Wow, everyone's a winner. Thanks for playing, partners.
Ladies and gentlemen,
boys and girls,
welcome to Who Did That Voice?
In just a moment, the show will begin. So please, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice. Today I am super excited to be bringing you an interview with Jim Hanks. Jim, thank you so very much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for reaching out to me. I appreciate that.
Well, it's my absolute honor to get to chat with you. You've done a lot of things behind the scenes that people may not be as familiar with, and that's a huge reason why I created this show, is to help people who are behind the voices become more known. And I believe you've started to become more known in the past few years or so, but behind the voices of animation and television and movies and the announcers on commercials and stuff, it's just something that's not as well known in our society. And so it was a huge reason why I created my show. I always ask the question, who did that voice? My parents told me to go look it up online. And a lot of the stuff, there wasn't a lot of stuff online 20 years ago. You know? So things have really grown and expanded, and the very first thing we really love to do, Jim, when we have someone on the show is get to know them. And so I would love to know, tell me about little Jimmy, the boy that grew into the man he is today. And how did he get into acting?
God, well, I got into acting because of my wife. I met my wife when we were in Sacramento, And when I met her, she was already doing a lot of dinner theater and stuff like that in Sacramento. And I had no desire to do theater up there because watching her do it, I didn't, I don't want to piss people off in Sacramento, but at the time, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was a little too, for lack of a better word, incestuous. I mean, everybody had relationships, and I found from going and literally watching auditions that my wife was at, watching how people who had relationships got roles more often than what I thought, which was certainly not objective, what I thought was the best actor at that audition. I'm just sitting back there in the back of the room, have no play on this at all, and just making my own opinions and go, well, if it was me, I would have that person and that person in those roles. And it would come up with, they would pick like people I was floored that they decided to go with. And I got to know a lot of the people in that community, and I loved them all. But I don't know, I was really shy. I didn't really have the desire to do theater at the time.
Yeah.
And then we moved down here and to LA, which is here. I am talking to you from LA. And the first job my wife got was a receptionist job for a pretty good agency, a little power boutique agency. And the owner of it, through going to social things like that with my wife with their company, the owner of the place found out who I was related to and went, "Oh, you have got to do this." And unfortunately, that particular agent probably got me in front of a lot of people that I was not ready to be in front of. I was incredible, I had not been doing it, and I was incredibly green, and so I think, ultimately that really hampered me, because casting people have very long memories down here, and so I went in and just did some of the most green mistakes, and just not being very good. It took a while for me to kind of get traction. But the best thing that particular agent did was he had introduced me to an acting teacher. I got some coaching, and then I went around and audited a bunch of acting classes, and ultimately went back to this first guy, and I've been with him ever since. And his name is Brian Reese, and he's a really good acting teacher. And it's not really teaching; it's more like working out. It's like going to an actor's gym. It's all cold reading. Gives you a scene at the beginning of the night. You have an hour, and then he gives an order, and everybody goes up and does their scene. So it's very fast. And I've been in that class for about 28 years now.
Oh, wow.
And so I've learned a lot just by doing it. And, acting is rather competitive. So I always want to be the best one in class, or I want to catch up to that best person in class. And you just want to wow everybody every night. And I love that. But that's how I got into the industry. I think backing up, and my story for why I ended up in voiceover, how I got into the industry was really simple. I was with an agency, Arlene Thornton, who is actually somebody else you talked to, Jack Angel. Arlene Thornton is married to Jack Angel, and she owns Arlene Thornton and Associates. And I was with them for on-camera commercial stuff. I had never done voiceover. And she called me up and said, "Hey," at the time I was doing stand-up comedy. That's where the agents who found me and brought me into her agency saw me at a comedy club and said, "Hey, we would like to, do you have representation?" I went, "No." Would you like some?" I went, "Yes." And so that was probably 92, maybe something like that, 91, 92. So Arlene calls me, and Arlene, owner of the place, and she's the big voiceover person there. She calls me up and says, "Hyundai is doing a commercial. They only want to see comedians because they want their copy funny, but it's not." So they wanted somebody who could take it and say it in a funny way and I went, all right, cool. And she says, have you ever been to a voiceover audition? I went, no, but I'll sign in and do what they tell me. And she went, perfect. And so I went on audition and I got the job.
Wow.
And from that point on, I was a voiceover guy. And, it was great. I've never taken a class. But I truly believe why I ended up, it was one of those things is when I was a kid, my niece and nephew were born when I was quite young. My sister had kids when she was young. So I was like about 8 years old when my niece was born.
Oh, wow. And
so one of the things I did when they were growing up is I would read them stories. They would, bring me a book and say, read to me. And so I would just do it. And I would just come up with voices. And the whole trick was to keep them engaged and make them laugh. And after a while, they kept, every time, when I was taking care of them, they would come up to me and say, here, read this book. I read it, and I just ended up, read 4 or 5 kids' books to them.
Yeah.
And just coming up with all these voices and stuff like that. And I truly believe that is where I learned to do it, because I learned to read out loud and create characters on the fly. And I tell people that all the time. Go read to little kids, and if you can keep them entertained, and you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Well, that's fantastic, Jim. I really can't thank you enough for diving into your past and voiceover and acting and just kind of the whole shebang. You even gave us a little bit of acting advice with, talking about being in your class for 28 years and just trying to be the best and always striving to continue your education.
I believe, I've heard a couple of actors in the past who say, I don't go to class because no one can teach me anything more. And I go, wow. To me, it's an ongoing thing. It never stops.
Yeah.
I think it's like musicians. Musicians just keep developing and keep
perfecting.
Perfecting and making subtle changes that you don't even realize are there until you've been in it for as long as you have.
Well, it's like martial arts. The more you practice, the better you become at it.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. My Brian Reese is constantly using sports metaphors. You don't think you're not going to go to Wimbledon and having never played tennis.
Yeah.
You have to work on it, and it's the same thing. Yeah, it's all about preparation and being ready for when somebody wants you to go and do something.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, you were mentioning your brother earlier, but we haven't mentioned who that is. Who is your brother?
Which one? I have 2.
Well, the one that's probably better known than the other.
Okay. All right. Well, Tom is my brother. Tom, of Bachelor Party fame. One
of my favorite is Money Pit.
Oh wow, man.
That's one of my absolute favorite movies. I think it's Volcano Joe with Meg Ryan.
Joe versus the Volcano.
Joe versus the Volcano. Yeah. Those two are 2 of my absolute favorite from his younger years in film. He's quite funny, but you are too. I've seen a lot of stuff behind the scenes with you, and you guys have a lot of similar humor and looks too. So
yeah. Well, yeah.
As well as sounding the same.
I like to say I'm the better looking one, but
absolutely.
I believe my wife says that, so that's all that really matters.
Right. So beyond that, one of the cool things is, you've actually been able to kind of carry on a legacy that Tom's been able to voice for Disney as the voice of Woody. How did all of that transpire for you to end up taking over Woody for the video games and toys and all of that? Oh,
it's just that I went in before the first movie ever came out, and Tom, I guess, was just busy.
Yeah.
He's all over the place. So for them to try to nail him down and come in and do some of this stuff is just, 1, he doesn't need the money, and 2, he's busy.
Yeah.
So I went in and did the first pull string toy, and I think there was 5 lines, yeehaw cow, you're my favorite deputy, and all that kind of stuff. I think I did a decent job. Disney was happy with what I did. I was able to sound like Tom, and it just kind of kept going. I don't know. I always try to do the best job I can, because they could always say, Jim, you're just not working out. But so far that's not the case.
You know, as a kid growing up, you don't always realize the behind the scenes things that go into toys and games and everything. And sometimes as a kid, you think, hey, that must just be Tom. So, you know, as you grow up, you realize that, oh, hey, it's actually Jim who voices the toys that I played with and the video games that I played on my, 3.5 floppy disk. No, CD drive. But, in those kind of cool things, they always had those really neat games on CD, and then they've different console games and stuff. And, I've actually had Pat Fraley on the show, and he does some of the Buzz Lightyear stuff when Tim isn't around. So it's really cool to know that there are other actors that are able to kind of come in and carry on the legacies of these characters. And for you guys, for you and your brother to carry on this one, it's kind of cool because it's a family thing, a familial legacy through Disney, which is fantastic. One of my favorite roles that you voiced Woody for was Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, The Adventure Begins. That has to be one of my absolute favorite Toy Story stories because they've told so many now at this point. But that was a really fun one with Buzz and Star Command and everything.
I think I only did an intro to that.
You guys were like toys in the beginning, and y'all put in a VHS of the movie, and then it's the Star Command thing. So it's more about Buzz's story, but you're in it in the beginning, and that was always a really fun one for me growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
But,
okay, cool. I don't think I ever saw it.
Well, it's definitely something you should check out.
A lot of these things I don't, like I do Leap Pad for kids, and I don't end up going out and getting a Leap Pad with
to play with it. Well, and you were also on Disney Infinity. Sadly, that's been canceled. But Disney Infinity and the Connect for Xbox and PlayStation and all those kind of things, and Toy Story Mania at the theme parks, and the game that was also for consoles. Which Toy Story Mania is one of my absolute favorite rides at Disney that they've done more recently. And so it's really cool to know that speaking with you, the next time I ride that ride or play that video game or watch that show, it just makes that connection for me so much more real because I've gotten to speak with you and share that story.
My voice. I'm all over that game. I'm all over that ride. Yeah,
you are. Man.
I've gone to Disneyland a couple of times, and I've never had to wait in line because I literally walk up to one of those people, the people wrangling the line, and like, do I really have to stand in line to listen to myself? Can it do it? And they go, I'm sorry, what? And I go, I did the voice, and I'll do it. Hey. Well, then they'll go, and they go get somebody, with a yellow blazer, and they let me and my family in. That's the only ride at Disneyland I can do that on.
You just need to do the voice when you enter the park and have somebody take you on a tour personally to all the rides.
Disney does not do that anymore. They used to. It was back in the day when I first started doing it, they did that, but they don't do that.
That's sad that they don't, but things change, that's for sure, unfortunately. Well, another character that you voiced that people may not be familiar with is Geoffrey the Giraffe. And sadly, we're at the point where Toys R Us has already declared bankruptcy. We're already seeing stores start to sell things off and shut down, sadly. But, realizing that you were Geoffrey the Giraffe was like, holy cow, this is super amazing, because the Toys R Us commercials were some of the most thought out, well done commercials of all time, and realizing you were the giraffe since I believe 2001 is just fantastic.
It was a couple of years, I think 2001 to 2004 or something like that. It was by a good distance was my favorite job, and that one was cool on so many levels, because when I went in and auditioned for it, the casting director was a woman, Carol Kimball, who's fantastic. She's just a wonderful woman. I went in and she said, they don't want any cartoony voices. They just want this giraffe to be a big kid. And I went, okay. And I just went, yeah. And I said, don't do anything weird with your voice. Just be a big kid who's really excited about toys. And I'm going, that's not hard. And at that time, my son was pretty young. It was 2001. So he was like 10. And, I kind of used the voice I played that I used with playing with my son when he was maybe a little younger. Just made him really excited. Just made it, this character just loves toys. And I did the audition. I felt pretty good. Carol just gave me a huge thumbs up at the end, which ultimately means nothing because it's all about what the client thinks.
Yeah.
But she was telling me that it was the second round that they had done. She said they had talked to everybody. They had brought in everybody in town. And I was going, oh, God, I haven't got a chance at this. And then, a day or two later, 2-3 days later, they call me and tell me I got it. And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was a great job. And it was so much fun because, well, one, I was working all the time because I would do the television commercials, but they weren't that many television commercials for the year. They would do, they usually, they would do up to Christmas, and then they would do kind of around spring break, and then there would be a couple of summer ones. Sorry, I'm hitting my lamp here.
You're okay.
But I was going in like every week doing radio commercials, and
for Toys R Us.
For Toys R Us.
As Geoffrey, cool.
As Geoffrey.
Very cool.
And the thing, I would go in and I would do it as scripted for several takes, and then I don't know, I would just kind of throw something in, and they would laugh, or but eventually, I remember one time we were quite a ways into it, and I did a couple of takes as scripted, and like on the third or fourth take, I just started playing around with stuff. And they went, and they go, okay, good. That's what we want you to do. We want you to play around with everything. I'm going, oh, so from that point on, I realized that the scripts were just kind of a guideline. They really wanted me to improv and make it my own. And I had a few people tell me, or ask me, are you afraid of that? Because they're just kind of using you. And I went, oh, God, no. The more I improv and make it my own character, the less likely they're going to replace me.
Yeah.
Which is what actors fear all the time. I remember one specific radio job I went in for. The scripts all had every line numbered, and it was just for them to keep track. It wasn't, they weren't broken up or anything like that. They were just numbered. And I remember going in and looking at this one script and going over it really quickly. And line 17 was just hyphens. All the way across. There was not a word there. It was just hyphens. And so before we even started recording, I said, and we're doing a phone patch. It was all phone patch back to Chicago. And so most of the people I recorded with, I never met physically. But I said, so line 17, would you like me to try to come up with something? Oh, yeah, we would. We just couldn't figure out what. And so that was there. I was going, okay, free license. I had to do the beauty of Geoffrey, especially for the radio commercials, is I did not have to sell anything.
Yeah.
There was a woman that I was phone patching with who was in Chicago, and she had all the selly stuff. And actually, that's Amy Lamdecker, who's she's on the Amazon show Transparent.
Okay, I was going to say that sounds really familiar.
Yeah, so. And I worked with her for a couple of years before I actually met her, and she moved out here and contacted me and said, "Let's meet in person." So we had lunch, and she's lovely in every way. So it was great because I got to goof around, and she just reacted to me and had to do all the selly stuff. So it was a fantastic job.
That's awesome.
It was, and then all the I loved, I really loved the fact that you said that they were successful, and they were at the time, the industry magazines about commercials. I remember one year, I don't know, it was 2003 or 4, where they had this one category where they rank all the commercials that year in instant recognition.
Okay.
And so out of the top 10, Toys R Us had 6 or 7 of the top 10 instantly recognizable. They knew the thing is you knew exactly what the product was or what the company was.
Yeah.
And and sure enough, a lot of it's that the little jingle at the very beginning. Oh, it was a Toys R Us group.
Yeah.
But I remember one time I know I'm just blabbing.
That's good. Blab. It's great. I love it.
There was a woman who we hadn't seen for a few years. We had worked with her at the Improv. My wife and I waited tables at the Improv before I started doing stand-up, and I made the switch. I went, I need to be on the other side of the lights.
Yeah.
I was doing so a couple of years after we had all worked there, we catch up with this woman who was working with us, who ultimately she had a really great role on West Wing, on Nicole Robinson. And she comes over to the house, and she didn't know anything about Toys R Us that I was doing it. And I mentioned it. She went, "Oh my God." And she described in detail 2 or 3 of the commercials. reciting my lines and everything and going, and it was like a couple of years after that commercial had actually aired.
Yeah, wow.
And I was going, wow, those were memorable, weren't they? And they were funny, and no one remembers it now because they're 14, 15 years old now, but or even more.
Yeah, about 15 years old. Yeah, roughly.
So, but at the time, it was so fun because I could, if I mentioned it to somebody, like, oh my God, I love those commercials. I could just do a line and people would finish it. It was, so much fun. They were, and granted now that was before everybody started cutting the cord, cutting the cable and stuff like that. So, everybody was still watching a lot of commercials. They were just, and it was a time that when good commercials came out that were entertaining, people really enjoyed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
and I absolutely agree with that, Jim, because I've mentioned it to my wife before that it's just the quality of the kind of commercials that get produced today that make you say, oh, geez, let's skip it. Or, however we can get past these. They're not enjoyable a lot of times anymore. Whereas back in the day, the commercials were really thought out, really well planned. And it was especially that way with Toys R Us commercials, whether Geoffrey was in them or not. They were always very well just constructed. And the music definitely was the key point that always made before and after what you were watching,
Yeah. And then, it was a thrill to have this animatronic character made by Stan Winston's company doing it. And, but we were lucky because I really had a nice rapport with the people at Toys R Us. I always get confused because I do Toy Story. I got too many jobs with toy. But the Toys R Us people invited me to go down to the Stan Winston facilities while they were building it.
Oh,
and that was trippy, and all the other Stan Winston stuff is all over the place. And I got a really amazing tour with my son. And then one time they were filming somewhere out in the valley, I forget where they would, for the commercials, they would take over a store.
Wow. And
film in there for, I don't know, a week or something like that, because they were usually film like 4 or 5 commercials in one shot for the full year.
Wow.
And I went down and watched them, and it was so trippy to watch this because they had it all computer operated. The mouth would be all computer operated to my voice. There would be another guy, making the head turn around and bobbing up and down or whatever. But I'm standing there and they're running it, and here's my voice coming from this giraffe that's 16 feet above my head. And I was just like, wow, that is so cool. That was amazing.
I didn't realize he was an animatronic, but he did have a very unique look to him. In today's era, I just assumed it was CG, but now that I think about it, it really was an animatronic. But that's awesome. They had it built up to, it was all animatronic up to just before its back legs. Okay.
And then it was just massive cables and everything coming out of that. So I think there's a couple of shots where he's walking down the aisles or something like that. And that would be CGI. But even, you're talking 15 years ago, CGI was very expensive in time. Yeah. Nowadays I could probably knock it out in a couple hours basically.
Yeah.
For a commercial. But it was a big thing. So they were spending a lot of money on those commercials.
Well, just before we actually interviewed, I watched a few, and one of them was Geoffrey crying over the toy prices because they were just so low, and the 2-day sale was going to just make him bawl his eyes out because he was going to miss all of his toys that they sold.
I'm going to miss you.
$39.99. I'm going to miss you.
My favorite was, I have a couple of them. One was the Easter Bunny one. Go, stop it. The Easter Bunny. Oh, please stop it. And that was just funny. And then there was another one where I'm reading every year they had the big Toy Story catalog come out. And there was several commercials about that catalog before the holidays.
Yeah.
And I remember it opens up. The parents are going, "Where are the kids?" "Oh, they're upstairs. Geoffrey's reading to them." "Who's Geoffrey?" And then it cuts to Geoffrey's head coming through the window, and he's reading the book.
I remember that.
And at one point during when I was doing the voiceover for it, I was just really. They said, "You just need to be really excited." So okay, and I was doing it, and I accidentally spit on the microphone. And I went, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to spit. I'm just really excited. And they start, on the other side of the glass, you see all the execs and stuff, and they're all busting up, and they come back. You don't hear anything, you just see them, and then all of a sudden you click. Oh my God, that was so fun! Oh, you got to keep doing that. That was great. So so in that thing, it cut back to me going, sorry kids, I didn't mean to spit on you, and then, it's that kind of stuff that was so fun. It was just, you really had to just be it.
Yeah.
And just, so I always, it was always a blast to do those commercials.
That's awesome that you loved them as much as they came. I mean, it comes across that you really loved it, because the commercials were just so energetic, and Geoffrey was always so emotional and just out there, and just, I don't know, the whole accumulation of everything they made into those commercials, especially the years you were voicing it, were just ultra fantastic. And I wish they were still using you up until today, but sadly they didn't.
Yeah, well, they got rid of that whole campaign when the original owner sold it. He sold it to some conglomerate, and what usually happens when something like that happens, everything shifts.
Yeah.
So the new ownerships went to a new ad agency, and a new ad agency is not going to use anything from the old ad agency, and so that, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And personally, I thought it was a mistake, not just because it was my job, but I don't, those commercials actually created a buzz.
Yeah.
And then they became kind of generic commercials after that.
I totally agree. I have some of the more recent ones I had seen in last few years. They just really didn't have much umph anymore. They still had the tunage that was similar to kind of what we were used to, but the whole flair of what they were going for was just really different from, and we're in a totally different era now, especially from the 90s and early 2000s. So, I guess I could say I understand in some ways, but in some ways I feel like they kind of killed a good thing. But, I guess now it's all dead. So what does it matter, right?
Time marches on.
It does. It does. Well, what are some other non-voiceover roles that you've done, Jim, or some other voiceover roles that you've done that we haven't talked about right now? That people would know you in.
That they would know me in? Oh,
yeah.
God. I don't know.
Or it could be either or, if they don't know you.
My on-camera career is not quite as good as my voiceover career. I guess I just have a face for radio. But no, I'm still struggling to try to, I haven't done much high profile stuff.
Yeah.
You hear little things here and there. I do a lot of low budget stuff for I like to do stuff for my friends. Who I just did a horror thing a couple of months ago that ended up being really an amazing experience, but it was, one of those $100,000 productions. I've been making a bit of a shift. I'm mostly writing now.
Okay.
Got several projects that I'm really happy with, excited about. And I just started within the last year writing with my son, and
cool.
He's quite good. And it's interesting because he grew up listening to my wife and I. Every movie or every TV show we ever watched, we would deconstruct it after we watched it, and talk about, the story, the script, what's wrong, what was great, talking a lot about performances and stuff like that. So from a really little kid, he became very observant. I just think that he, even before he realized it, he had a much more scientific look at what filmmaking was. And so,
That's awesome.
So when we come into writing, and it's funny because he'd just kind of been studying writing a little bit on his own for a few years, and, reading up on story structure and the hero's journey and all that kind of stuff. And when I asked him to step in, I was writing this, I have been writing this really high concept sci-fi thing with another writing partner. And I asked my writing partner, hey, we were kind of getting a little stuck, or it was just a little stagnant a little bit. And I said, can I show this to my son? And he said, sure. And so I gave the pilot that we had already written to my son. And he came back going, holy crap, this is cool. I love this. And I said, okay, well, I'm interested in your input. So give me your input. So he went back, he read the script 3 more times, went through it, copious notes. And then we sat down with my writing partner, Paul Benton is his name. His notes were fantastic. And he even took a stab at a line of dialogue that he felt was really integral. It was a pivotal line. And he just finessed it, and my part, Paul and I just looked at each other and went, holy crap, he just nailed that. He made that passage work.
Yeah.
Where it was just kind of like we were looking at it going, and he stepped in and did, and so he's been writing with us ever since, and he's very good.
That's
and
awesome.
It's really amazing thing to sit across and listen to my son talk so eloquently about a project we're working on and just go, wow, that is so cool to watch.
That's amazing. The legacy we leave through our children is one of the best things I think any parent can do. And I'm sure getting to partner with him on that is just fantastic for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for the most, sometimes the father-son dynamic creeps in, but in some ways, I think it's helping the father-son. I think
that's awesome.
We're able to communicate. I think we're communicating better and listening better to each other. So
that's really awesome.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
I highly recommend it if you feel you can do it with your offspring.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's really awesome, Jim. I appreciate you diving into that. And, it's really cool that you're diving into some projects. Are we potentially going to be seeing that sci-fi project hit the screen sometime, or?
We're still shopping it around. My agents are, we've had a couple of preliminary talks with people. It's original and it's
nice.
Huge. It's a huge, I'm not going to tell you anything about it, but
okay,
we take so many, science fiction tropes and throw it in a bucket and mix it up. And I believe we're coming up with something, a lot of the concepts you've seen, but the way we're doing it is, it's futuristic. It's, a dystopia, society. And, it's just there's a lot of politics. There's a lot of social commentary, which is, that's my favorite part of sci-fi.
Yeah.
Is you entertain, yet you still comment.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of, wow, if people were in that situation, how would you react?
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of Walking Dead. I'm not a fan of horror, and I'm not a fan of zombies. But as that series has gone along, the zombies are the least scary thing. It's human nature is what's really interesting. And they just keep going with it. I think it's not as strong as it was a few years ago, but I'm still fascinated by it because they're still exploring, what happens when somebody cracks, that's there's a little bit of that in ours.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it, so please keep me in the loop when that comes out. I would love to watch it. I would say if y'all haven't pursued Netflix, you should totally do that because I know Netflix has a big market for getting things out there.
We've talked to them in a little bit, and we're still kind of we're leaning toward. At one point, we were leaning, going, "No way, we don't want to go there." But now we're rethinking that. Only in that we're getting, that's the funny thing when you start doing stuff like this, you start learning things about the industry that you have no idea about.
Yeah,
and just how people deal with somebody coming in with a project, and the protections or the lack of protection you have, and it's a weird thing. Yeah, it's been fascinating, but we were getting really great responses. We have a guy I knew from acting class who's now working for a video game developer. I told him about it, and I ended up sending him the pilot and what have you. And
oh, wow.
He and his company got really excited about it.
Oh, cool.
So, when we present it, it seems to come across pretty favorably. People like it. So
I can't wait to see it, Jim. It sounds It sounds like everything
Yeah.
I would love because I'm a huge sci-fi fan. My wife and I just finished watching the new Lost in Space on Netflix.
Oh, we're
And-
watching that now. I liked it. I like it.
Oh my gosh, man. They have I've been really impressed with a lot of the stuff Netflix is helping creators produce or reproduce and come out with, reboots of things like Lost in Space. So whether it's on Netflix or whatever network, you got to let me know. I'll definitely share it out there with my listenership.
Our dream would be HBO because
that would be amazing.
Yeah, because of the production value. And then that's not saying that Netflix has got bad production value. Obviously, they don't.
No.
They have great production value.
But Game of Thrones, come on.
Yeah, or in Westworld.
Or Westworld, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But the thing about ours is that it's original.
Okay.
And there's an element in a difficulty in pitching something that's original, because it doesn't have the built-in audience.
Yeah.
My theory is at some point somebody needs to make something new that creates a whole new universe. Because the Marvel, as I can see behind you, Marvel and DC and all those things. There's a great universes, and they definitely have their built-in audience. But after a while, people are gonna get tired of that and go, surprise me, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
we've created this incredibly dense universe. I had to buy a huge bulletin board that's in my living room. That's 9 feet long and 3.5, 4 feet tall.
Nice.
And you should have seen it with everything we were trying to come up with in this thing, connecting all these different things and keeping everything straight in our heads. And which is another thing my son is great at, because I'll go, wait a second, what about doesn't Joe Blow do that? No, he did that in episode 3. Oh, okay, right, okay.
So he's a good detail guy.
Yes, he is.
That's
he keeps it all
awesome.
Straight.
Well, I'll tell you, a show I loved that was an original sci-fi was the Stargate series that came out, 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
But that was still based on a movie.
Well,
there was a movie Stargate. So,
but the movie was a new premise for something that we hadn't seen before. Kind of like when Star Wars first came out, it gave us this dingier, grungier sci-fi that wasn't this pristine white ships and everything that we used to get in the 60s and 70s. So, I love when people create something original, because eventually you're right. You do want to see something that just blows your mind on every aspect, because you don't have any idea what to expect from it.
Well, anything like Star Wars, Star Trek, Aliens, anything that is, cultural zeitgeist has to start somewhere.
Well, you shared a little bit of advice with us, Jim, in the beginning with your story of continued education, but what is some advice you would give to an aspiring actor or actress who might look at joining the world of acting, and more specifically trying to maybe gear towards the niche of voiceover itself?
In voiceover, I would not suggest anybody do it like I did. I would suggest that they get classes. Carol Kimball does classes. I always recommend her. And there's another company called the Kalmansons and Kalmansons. And they both do a really great job of teaching people how to do it and how to work a microphone. And there's a lot of stuff. Again, I think I had an advantage when I started doing voiceover, because I was already doing stand-up.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people really have a difficult time with as an actor, and especially a voiceover actor, is that people are so unaccustomed to hearing what their voice really sounds like.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, a voiceover actor will record themselves and then try to critique their work, and they're so, my voice is so weird, and it's not. It's just you're hearing it without the bone conduction and and everything else that goes along with hearing your own voice. Because normally when you're talking, you can't hear it because you're talking at the same time. So there's all this weird reverberation in your head until you record it and play it back and go, oh man, all that other stuff is gone. And all I hear is my voice, and I'm so not used to that.
Yeah.
So one is, that's probably a good thing to do, is record yourself, get used to your voice. Maybe that's not such a big deal now with so much, video blogging and stuff like that. Maybe a lot more people are used to their voices. But I still hear it. I still hear people like in my acting class, we do camera nights sometimes, and actors just freak out when they see them and see themselves and hear themselves. And I'm thinking, wow, I mean, this is ultimately what you want to be doing, right? Get over that. Get used to how you look and sound. But yeah, education is the thing. The thing that stand-up did for me is I had been doing stand-up for a few years, so I had a microphone in my hand. I learned how to use a microphone in a projected way, too close, too far, blah, blah, blah. You just get used to that.
Yeah.
And also being able to sell a joke by whispering, by bringing the microphone close.
Yeah.
And that's the thing where, when you're in a voiceover job and they tell you to get more intimate with the microphone, you need to know what that means, which means to get close and get, like you're whispering sweet nothings in a microphone, and it changes the attitudes. And that's what a class like the Kalmansons or Carol Kimball will teach you, and teach you how to bring different qualities to different types of material, whether if it's selly or if it's non-announcery. That's the thing I always get, non-announcery, but still I'm trying to sell something. But the Kalmansons' favorite direction is talk like you're talking to one person. And truly you are, you're talking to every single person who's going to see this commercial individually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and also taking classes from either one of them, you're creating a rapport with them. They get to know you. You're good at it. They're going to bring you in. That's important. I was really lucky. I mean, I was lucky. I went out and I got a job at a time when there was a lot of voiceover work. I mean, there's a lot less of it nowadays. And as even back then, we were dealing with, the blue collar voiceover actor was dealing with the fact that the big stars were doing a lot of voiceover.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably even more so now.
I believe so. Yeah.
And so it's hard to compete to get that Bud job when they know they're going to get George Clooney to do it, and
or that Tom Hanks guy.
Man. Hey, yeah. I'm going to be the first one to tell you that I probably have gotten jobs because I sounded like Tom. And there are times where I've been in auditions where they have literally directed me. There are certain kinds of direction that people give me where I go, oh, they want me to sound like Tom. And because normally I don't think I sound like Tom all the time.
No.
Physiologically, I speak differently. There's a really specific thing. I think physiologically we share very similar makeup. I think our pipes are very similar. But Tom talks louder and more explosive than I do naturally. We always said my family, my oldest brother Larry, he's the funny one, and Tom was the loud one, and I was the big one. My wife likes to say the handsome one, but anyway, thank you, honey. So when I'm in an audition and somebody starts, could you just kind of bring up the energy, a little more power behind it? And I go, okay, they want me to talk like Tom. Okay, here you go. So,
well, the resonance and the look that you have are very similar to your brother, to Tom, but you do have a different structure, the way you talk and everything. It's just broken up differently, but that's because you guys are two different unique people. So
yeah, in the last year or so, I've seen a couple of different things when I've been on camera, and I'm looking at myself going, oh, Jesus, I think I look like Tom. So okay. So
that's funny.
It makes it, it's a double-edged sword. Some people, I know I've lost out on a lot of things because people think it's distracting, and I can see that. So it's not much I can do about it. Yeah. So I just keep going.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for all of your advice and the great starting points for people to look at through either Carol Kimball or the Kalmansons. I think those are some great starting points for people who are looking at getting into the acting industry, especially in the voiceover side of things. And, just the in-depth advice you shared with us today is very invaluable because, I always enjoy getting to hear different aspects and perspectives from my special guests on the show. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
I have one final question for you today, and we will wrap this interview up. Are you ready?
Okay, I don't know.
All right.
We'll find out.
The question is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
The legacy I want to leave behind. Boy.
And this could be both familial and for your acting career.
Well, body of work would be great, though my legacy, at this point would be Geoffrey. Proud of Geoffrey. Being good at what I do and being a nice guy. I certainly want everybody to think of me in a warm, fuzzy way. And I like to, like you asking for advice, or I love helping people. I've helped people get representation when I feel like they are at a point in their career or their experience level that, I'm sorry, my wife is texting me.
Oh, you're fine.
I've helped people get representation when they were just at that point where they were good enough to have it, but they couldn't get in it because, and I've helped a lot of people that way. When I, especially from class, I've seen people struggle, and then work, really get good. And I've come up to them and said, you know what, how do you have representation? And then go, okay, I call my agent and say, these people are going to get a hold of you. You really should. There's something special about this person.
That's awesome.
And I love doing that. And I want people to think that I was good at what I do or did. I'm talking myself in the past. I want people to go, he was a good guy. He did what he did as well as he could. And beyond that, what is there? I want people, I guess I want people to like me. But I would want people to think that Jim was a nice guy, but he was also a straight shooter.
I like that. I think that's a solid legacy. I think one additive I will add on there is that in 100 years, people are still talking about your sci-fi original creation.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, as far as, I have I've got another project that I think could be a legacy piece that we'll see what happens.
Fantastic. Well, you have to keep us in the loop, please. Okay. I will definitely be the first one to binge it when it's out.
Okay. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate this.
You're very welcome. I had an absolute wonderful time getting to chat with you today, Jim.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Well, Jim, it has been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show today. Would you please give us a special closeout as Geoffrey the Giraffe from Toys R Us and Woody from Toy Story?
All right. Well, imagine this. Close your eyes. And Geoffrey. Hi, this is Geoffrey the Giraffe. Let's see here. What would he say? Okay, yeah. Hi, this is Geoffrey the Giraffe, the Toys R Us mascot from the early 2000s. And I'm walking around looking at all the empty shelves and, hey, look at this. There's still a Woody doll sitting here. Pull the string here. You're my favorite deputy. Let's do that again. Yee-haw, cowboy. Well, let's see. Oh, how many sayings does he have here? There's a snake in my boot. All right. Anyway. There's Buzz. Who cares about Buzz? Hey, this is Jim Hanks on Who Did That Voice?
Well, everyone, I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode with Jim Hanks, the voice of Geoffrey the Giraffe from Toys R Us, and Woody from Toy Story. And if you did, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching Who Did That Voice. I would love to hear from you. A question you might ask yourself is, where can I listen to Who Did That Voice? That's an excellent question. You can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co. Click the episodes tab and listen away. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us next time for our special guest, Robert Siglum Paglia, an entertainment attorney at law, a voice actor, and so much more. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they've voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.